Good evening. Let's read some more. I did need a break because I was close to fall asleep. I want to watch the Danish early evening news in 50 minutes. And I'm very sleepy, but I'm always sleepy because I never sleep enough in the nights. I not do that because I always get up every morning. I just get up. I'm getting up every morning before 9 a.m.
One dot 165. Politics. Ideology. The Nazis were a far-right fascist political party which arose during the social and financial upheavals that occurred following the end of World War I. 166. The party remained small and marginalized, receiving 2.6% of the federal vote in 1928. Prior to the onset of the Great Depression in 1929. 167. By 1930 the party won 18.3% of the federal vote, making it the Riksdag's second largest political party. 168. While in prison after the failed beer hall putsch of 1923, Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, which laid out his plan for transforming German society into one based on race. 169. Nazi ideology brought together elements of antisemitism, racial hygiene, and eugenics, and combined them with pan-Germanism and territorial expansionism with the goal of obtaining more Lebensraum for the Germanic people. 170. The regime attempted to obtain this new territory by attacking Poland and the Soviet Union, intending to mass murder or deport the Jews and Slavs living there, who it viewed as being inferior to the Aryan master race and part of a Jewish Bolshevik conspiracy. 171. 172. The Nazi regime believed that only Germany could defeat the forces of Bolshevism and save humanity from world domination by international jury. 173. Other people deemed life unworthy of life by the Nazis included the mentally and physically disabled, Romani people, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, and social misfits. 174. 175. Additionally, Freemasons were heavily monitored and persecuted. 176. Heinrich Himmler, Hitler and Victor Lutz performed the Nazi salute at the Nuremberg rally September 1934. Influenced by the Volkisch movement, the regime was against cultural modernism and supported the development of an extensive military at the expense of intellectualism. 12. 177. Creativity and art were stifled except where they could serve as propaganda media. 178. The partyist symbols such as the blood flag and rituals such as the Nazi party rallies to foster unity and bolster the regime's popularity. 179. Government. Hitler, Göring, Goebbels and Rudolf Hess. During a military parade in 1933, Hitler ruled Germany autocratically by asserting Führerprinzip, leader principle, which called for absolute obedience by all subordinates. He viewed the government structure as a pyramid, with himself the infallible leader at the apex. Party rank was not determined by elections, and positions were filled through appointment by those of high rank. 180. The party used propaganda to develop a cult of personality around Hitler. 181. Historians such as Kashaw emphasize the psychological impact of Hitler's skill as an orator. 182. Roger Gill states, His moving speeches captured the minds and hearts of a vast number of the German people. He virtually hypnotized his audiences. 183. While top officials reported to Hitler and followed his policies, they had considerable autonomy. 184. He expected officials to work towards the Führer to take the initiative in promoting policies and actions in line with party goals and Hitler's wishes, without his involvement in day-to-day decision-making. 185. The government was a disorganized collection of factions led by the party elite, who struggled to amass power and gain the Führer's favor. 186. Hitler's leadership style was to give contradictory orders to his subordinates and to place them in positions where their duties and responsibilities overlapped. 187. In this way he fostered distrust, competition, and infighting among his subordinates to consolidate and maximize his own power. 188. Successive Reichsstatthalter decrees between 1933 and 1935 abolished the existing Länder, constituent states, of Germany and replaced them with new administrative divisions, the GOI, governed by Nazi leaders, Gauleiters. 189. The change was never fully implemented, as the Länder were still used as administrative divisions for some government departments such as education. This led to a bureaucratic tangle of overlapping jurisdictions and responsibilities typical of the administrative style of the Nazi regime. 190. Jewish civil servants lost their jobs in 1933, except for those who had seen military service in World War I. Members of the party or party supporters were appointed in their place. 191. As part of the process of Gleichschaltung, the Reich local government law of 1935 abolished local elections, and mayors reappointed by the Ministry of the Interior. 192. Law. Charts showing the pseudo-scientific racial divisions used in the racial policies of Nazi Germany in August 1934. Civil servants and members of the military were required to swear an oath of unconditional obedience to Hitler. These laws became the basis of the Führerprinzip, the concept that Hitler's word overrode all existing laws. 193. Any acts that were sanctioned by Hitler, even murder, thus became legal. 194. All legislation proposed by cabinet ministers had to be approved by the office of deputy Führer Rudolf Hess, who could also veto top civil service appointments. 195. Most of the judicial system and legal codes of the Weimar Republic remained in place to deal with non-political crimes. 196. The courts issued and carried out far more death sentences than before the Nazis took power. 196. People who were convicted of 3 or more offenses, even petty ones, could be deemed habitual offenders and jailed indefinitely. 197. People such as prostitutes and pickpockets were judged to be inherently criminal and a threat to the community. Thousands were arrested and confined indefinitely without trial. 198. A meeting of the 4 jurists who imposed Nazi ideology on the legal system of Germany, left to right Roland Friesler, Franz Schlegelberger, Otto Georg Thirac and Kurt Rothenberger, a new type of court, the Volksgerichtshof, People's Court, was established in 1934 to deal with political cases. 199. This court handed out over 5,000 death sentences until its dissolution in 1945. 200. The death penalty could be issued for offenses such as being a communist, printing seditious leaflets, or even making jokes about Hitler or other officials. 201. The Gestapo was in charge of investigative policing to enforce Nazi ideology as they located and confined political offenders, Jews, and others deemed undesirable. 202. Political offenders who were released from prison were often immediately rearrested by the Gestapo and confined in a concentration camp. 203. The Nazis used propaganda to promulgate the concept of Rassenskande, race defilement, to justify the need for racial laws. 204. In September 1935, the Nuremberg laws were enacted. These laws initially prohibited sexual relations and marriages between Aryans and Jews and were later extended to include gypsies, Negroes or their bastard offspring. 205. The law also forbade the employment of German women under the age of 45 as domestic servants in Jewish households. 206. The Greek citizenship law stated that only those of German or related blood could be citizens. 207. Thus Jews and other non-Aryans were stripped of their German citizenship. The law also permitted the Nazis to deny citizenship to anyone who was not supportive enough of their regime. 207. A supplementary decree issued in November defined as Jewish anyone with 3 Jewish grandparents, or 2 grandparents if the Jewish faith was followed. 208. Military and paramilitary. Wehrmacht. The Unified Armed Forces of Germany from 1935 to 1945 were called the Wehrmacht, Defense Force. PIs included the Heer, Army, Kriegsmarine, Navy, and the Luftwaffe, Air Force. From the 2nd of August 1934, members of the armed forces were required to pledge an oath of unconditional obedience to Hitler personally. In contrast to the previous oath, which required allegiance to the constitution of the country and a column of tanks and other armored vehicles of the Panzerwaffe near Stalingrad, 1942 its lawful establishments. This new oath required members of their military to obey Hitler even if they were being ordered to do something illegal. 209. Hitler decreed that the army would have to tolerate and even offer logistical support to the Einsatzgruppe and the mobile death squads responsible for millions of murders in Eastern Europe when it was tactically possible to do so. 210. Wehrmacht troops also participated directly in the Holocaust by shooting civilians or committing genocide under the guise of anti-partisan operations. 211. The party line was that the Jews were the instigators of the partisan struggle and therefore needed to be eliminated. 212. On the 8th of July 1941, Heydrich announced that all Jews in the eastern conquered territories were to be regarded as partisans and gave the order for all male Jews between the ages of 15 and 45 to be shot. 213. By August, this was extended to include the entire Jewish population. 214. In spite of efforts to prepare the country militarily, the economy could not sustain a lengthy war of attrition. A strategy was developed based on the tactic of blitzkrieg, lightning war, which involved using quick coordinated assaults that avoided enemy strong points. Attacks began with artillery bombardment, followed by bombing and strafing runs. Next the tanks would attack and finally the infantry would move into secure captured area. 215. Victories continued through mid-1940, but the failure to defeat Britain was the first major turning point in the war. The decision to attack the Soviet Union and the decisive defeat at Stalingrad to the retreat of the German armies and the eventual loss of the war. 216. The total number of soldiers who served in the Wehrmacht from 1935 to 1945 was around 18.2 million, of whom 5.3 million died. 151. SA and SS. Top. SA members enforce a boycott of Jewish stores. The 1st of April 1933. Bottom. Troop inspection in Berlin of the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, 1938. The Sturmabteilung, SA, Storm Detachment, or Brown Shirts, founded in 1921 was the first paramilitary wing of the Nazi Party. Their initial assignment was to protect Nazi leaders at rallies and assemblies. 217. They also took part in street battles against the forces of rival political parties and violent actions against Jews and others. 218. Under Ernst Romm's leadership, the SA grew by 1934 to over 500,000 members, 4.5 million including reserves, at a time when the regular army was still limited to 100,000 men. The Versailles Treaty. 219. Romm hoped to assume command of the army and absorb it into the ranks of